You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Sean Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach. Really excited to introduce you to Andrea Crabtree. Andrea is a certified veterinary practice manager, received her California Professional in Human Resources. She's a certified compassion fatigue professional and is fear-free certified. Andrea is the owner of FurPaws Consulting in California, where she works with business owners and managers to develop their leadership teams as well as to expand and develop on their business. Andrea also stays busy with public speaking at a variety of veterinary events, doing what she loves teaching, coaching, and training. She's a member of Southern California Veterinary Medical Association, VHMA, and Vet Partners, and co founded the SoCal Veterinary Managers Network. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate coming in.
So I'm just wondering, in this world of where we are in veterinary medicine, so there's a bunch of consolidation, there's a bunch of people that run their own practices. How do you find customers, and who are the customers for consulting on practice management and leadership in them?
Well, you differentiated between the consolidators and private owners. And certainly, I do not see, at least my clients and my experience, is not with corporates. More often, I'm seeing, and my clients specifically, are private owners. And it's usually between 1 and 5 or 6 practices. Any practice over, 5 or 6 or even 7 doctors, they're the ones that are getting entwined with the consolidators through corporate, because an associate can't buy a practice that huge. It's a beast. And so they just can't afford to buy into a practice. Even Stage, they have a hard time buying into a practice that's that large, that's grossing that much revenue. So for sure, I'm seeing definitely the smaller practice and practice owners reaching out for some consulting advice.
Interesting.
How would one say, hey, you know what, I need help here? Like, how would you describe that persona, and what type of problems people are calling you with?
Most of my clients are coming from word of mouth or from a rep from industry partners. And what's happening is it's the staff, it's the employees, it's the team, because people are icky and sticky. Like, I will take a parvo dog any day over the week right over a person, right? That's our veterinary teams are icky and sticky and have things go on that veterinary hospitals are not equipped to handle. They just don't know what to do with people. And so where I come in and my expertise is, 20 years in a veterinary practice, working my way from kennel up and having my undergrad and pre-vet. So I have a little bit of knowledge, expertise, and training there, but a lot of significant training in HR. So that's where the icky sticky comes in, where I can help practices with things like policies and procedures and employee engagement and retention instead of turnover, protocols and procedures and systems in place that people will buy into to make practices more efficient. I see a lot of teams struggle with efficiency, and that's partly because the practice managers and practice owners don't know necessarily how to roll out policies and procedures that are employee friendly, if you will, that people will buy into.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So I got a bunch of questions, but Andrea, let's kind of like day in the life of a small veterinary practice that, things are just getting out of control. Like, technology is off in one direction,
Right.
people
Yeah.
and culture is off in a different direction than they want it to be. And they hear about you through some way. And like, how do you go in and triage like that situation? Like, what's the first kind of meeting look like?
Usually I do a 1 to 2 hour phone call with them right off the bat, because they're reaching out typically via email. And so I set up a time to chat with them or come in the practice if they want me to. And I just ask them, like, just dump on me. Tell me what's going on in your practice. And specifically, I ask the question of what keeps you up at night, what puts an ulcer in your gut. If you could fix one thing in your practice tomorrow, what would you fix? And part of that is because I feel like if I can't address the practice owner or practice manager's 911 concern, then they're not even going to look at, like, hey, did you even know that elephant in the room over there? Like, did you even see that hot mess over there? And so if they're worried about, hemorrhaging cash or someone stealing from them or a bad employee situation, they're not even going to pay attention to the fact that they have, veterinary medical board like malpractice case waiting to happen, or, bad medical records, or an OSHA violation that's going to shut them down, or something insane, or even bad culture. The Mean Girls. I see the Mean Girls group all the time in practices, and they don't know that they have this toxic culture with this group of Mean Girls because they're so worried about this other thing, whatever it is. So I often will just tell them, like, let's just sit down and work on this first and figure this out. And then let me give you some things that we can work on over here that maybe you didn't even know was happening, or that's next step, or that to me is going to triage to the top of the list. Yeah, every practice is different.
So, and then that was kind of my follow-on question is like, from a technology stack perspective, we're innovation podcasts. So, where are people missing the mark? Like, is there any kind of trends that you see, like after all of these years doing this consulting piece, that people are just like missing the basics? And maybe what are those?
Yeah. So there's still fax machines in practices. Like, what the hell is that? Oh, so I would say, yeah, like if you have a fax machine, like unplug it and send it to recycle, right? Get rid of it, fax to email. I feel like sometimes we practice medicine from Noah's Ark days, right? We're still there. And although COVID did make us change very, very quickly, I see practices that are more efficient when they have technology in their practice. And I don't mean like just email, right? But like electronic medical records. They have apps for their practices for ease of client communication. They have two-way texting, just simple programs where even caller ID on your phone, where you can actually like pull up a client's account before you even answer the phone. Like, wow, that's amazing. So I think innovation is something that we have so many amazing tools that are given to us, provided like literally at our fingertips. And for some reason, well, see, the change word, the C word, right, is really bad. We don't integrate them into our practices to make our lives easier. So I just encourage people, like, go to a trade show and just pick one piece of technology and integrate it into your practice, whatever it may be. And if you go to one conference a year and you only get one piece of technology, well, okay, but maybe try for two next year, right? Just one piece of technology into your practice. And it can be something as easy as, like, on our Cardell units, they have USB that will go directly into your PIM systems. And it's something as easy as, like, integrate that. Your x-rays, integrate that. Your lab work, integrate that. Right? Get an app for your practice. Like, have automatic replies to your clients about appointments and med refills, and oh my gosh, like negative and normal blood work. Like, oh, there's so many.
So, Sean asked this question, in terms of, or maybe I did, about the, corporate, non-corporate, and you mentioned that your clients are non-corporate, and the assumption is that corporate have their own infrastructure. Spending the last 3 to 4 years looking at the corporate structure, they're buying the clinic, and then essentially they're adopting whatever the management structure is in there, and none of the consolidators, at least the early ones, have the reach to actually do any changes in the practice. It's just the reality. The regional manager, who some consolidators put 25 practices on, is not able to make changes in 25 practices, and you know it because you're doing it one at a time. So
Hmm.
is this why there's this negative kind of connotation associated with the consolidators? Because they're coming in, but they're not bringing any better employee-centric practices or, culture change or anything like that. Is this why we're? Because shouldn't they be your clients? Because this is what they do. They need the unified and good culture, and they practice. So what do you think about that?
So what I see in the corporate structure is a hierarchy and more systems in place in the upper level management. So things like HR, marketing, finances, they have people in place for that. So when I think of corporate medicine, what happens is if somebody has a struggle with an employee, they contact corporate's HR person. And then that person and HR will handle it, like in a maternity leave or something like that, right? If a a regional or a practice manager under a corporate umbrella is not going to have influence when it comes to what platform they use for, say, social media or for marketing, because the corporate is going to be doing that. They don't have a, like, I'm not going to go into a corporate and help them set up their chart of accounts in their QuickBooks. That's what I do with practices. Corporate takes over that. And so when I talk about the shit show practices that I sometimes acquire as clients, it's because they don't have that infrastructure set up at all. They need help with that. They don't know what a chart of accounts is. They don't look at their P&Ls on a regular basis. They don't have an employee handbook. They don't have policies and procedures. That's all stuff that the corporate is going to set up and feed downhill. Benefits. That's all stuff that corporate feeds downhill. So when we talk about the differences between corporate and private practice, is oftentimes veterinarians come out of vet school and they have a very small
They have
knowledge.
none. They have none knowledge.
But okay.
Stop being so nice.
I was trying to be nice there. Yeah, they just have minimal to none, according to Dr. Ivan there.
Well, he's done
Training in
vet
that
school
area.
twice, so I mean, he's talking.
That's right.
From
That's
a
right.
perspective
Neither
of-
one had a business
neither
degree
one.
incorporated
Right.
into it.
Right. And so that's where I come in and help, where the corporate structures, they have that in place, where they have a chart of accounts ready to go, right? They have marketing plans for them. They have HR people. So that's where the support from the practice manager can be from the director or from higher up, different departments. And that's where I come in. I have the formal training and the experience to be able to help practices walk them through that, depending on what the practice wants.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so I wanted to jump in and defend some of my customers, Ivan, because some of them do. Some of the corporate groups actually do a phenomenal job. And I've had the opportunity to be out in front of them, and I'm not going to call any out, but I don't think all corporate groups are created equally when it comes to that. So I wanted to throw that out
Yeah,
too.
I
So
would agree.
any of
Yeah.
our listeners that are listening, you can thank me now or thank me later. Feel free to beat up on Ivan and praise me.
Yes, we'll bash him later.
We love doing that. But Andrea, I really think that that's fantastic. So, I mean, we have a lot of private practice veterinarians that listen to our show, and some of them, are going to be sitting there thinking, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting." So, what does your ideal customer look like? Who do you want to work with? In case people are listening and like, "Oh, that Andrea lady, she sounds really smart." Where are your customers located, and what do you love doing?
I have practices all over the country. I have a couple out of the country as well that I work with. So location isn't necessarily, through COVID, right? We all learned that location is, forget that.
No, we all haven't learned that. There's still some people that are forcing their employees to go back to the office.
Right. Well, and doctor needs a technician. So yes, some people do have to actually go in. I work with private owners, and so I'm looking for practices anywhere from a single doctor practice up to, again, 5, 6, 7 doctor practices before they hit that corporate level. Multiple practices, multiple sites, multiple locations, general practice, emergency, specialty. I've done it all: equine, large animal, small animal. And I would say that if a practice owner or a practice manager is struggling in any aspect of their practice, whether it be HR, which is more than likely the big struggle that I see, communication, employee engagement, retention, those types of things. And sometimes it's often as like, I'm not as profitable as I want to be, or I need to prep to sell. I don't have an exit strategy. Lots and lots of different struggles that private owners are, and even practice managers are struggling with. And I just say, like, throw me an email, right? And if it shoe fits, let's make it happen. And if not, I can recommend you somebody who can. I feel like the benefit of being in Vet Partners is I have so many different reliable, amazing people that I know that offer services. So if it's not my specific forte, like social media, I will give you over to a colleague that is going to put you in good hands. And I would say, when you ask what I love veterinary medicine. And of course, the classic answer is I love animals, right? Of course, don't we all? But my passion is actually with people. I am definitely a business. My little hamster upstairs, he spins on my little hamster is a business minded. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So yeah, lots of business ideas, thinking outside of the box. I love working with people, and I'm definitely a person who loves to pour into others and making this profession better than when I found it and when I came into it. And I think being able to help a variety of different practices, a variety of different practice owners, managers, or even team players in each individual practice, that's where I geek out, loving the fact that I can put, like, I do these big conferences for these CSRs twice a year, where these poor little CSRs get no training. They're fed to the wolves, literally our clients. They have 75% of client interface and they don't have any training. And so even pouring into the CSRs where I'm teaching them how to answer the phone and how to have some compassion and empathy for clients. I love that. That's my passion. That's my favorite thing to do is coach, teach, and train teams, regardless of what that team looks like, from kennel up to practice ownership, making sure that the practice is better, whatever better looks like to that practice.
Well, that was a sales pitch if I ever heard one.
From my heart.
You mentioned how the CSRs are fed to the wolves, and I'm just so surprised that veterinarians, technicians, and our CSRs, they all have the capacity to have very difficult communications with the clients, the situations with euthanasias and things like
Sure,
that.
right.
Somehow, naturally, the veterinary professionals of all ranks are, comfortable in the situation. But what I find is that they're uncomfortable talking to each other. So
Yeah.
what are
Isn't
those
that the
tough
truth?
communications that you see that they need to be trained in when you're entering the practice?
I just got back from PacFet in San Francisco, and in March I was at Western States, and I think it's August I'll be at AVMA. And I'll tell you what, my most popular lecture by far, I have two, is communication. And I have two different communication lectures. One is with clients and coworkers, and one is with your team as a leader to the team. And I often find that we can communicate with clients. We get very uncomfortable in icky sticky situations with clients. So empathy we can do with euthanasias, financial ones, or conflict conversations. Whew, back out, run like hell, right? And then talking to each other because we work with each other, 40 plus hours a week. We are, quote, family, right? And so I can say whatever I want to say to my sister. She's always going to be my sister. I can't say that to another fellow technician, right? Even though we call each other family. So I don't necessarily like to compare practices as family environments because it's not really the dynamics. It's still a boss, it's still a coworker. And I think the big thing when we go into conversations with each other is we don't have any self awareness, little to no self awareness. So we don't know who we are personally, who I am, and then who I'm speaking to, and how we have effect on others, right? How is somebody else hearing what I'm saying? And so a lot of my communication coaching is understand who you are. And my first thing is I'm a big girl, I have big arms, I have a loud voice. Like I know I am intimidating to people even though I don't mean to be. And I know that about myself. So going into a conversation, I have to know that about me and then know who I'm speaking to. And so if I'm speaking to an introvert, brand new employee who is petrified, I have to really pull myself in, right? And maybe let them stand up and I sit down and talk softly to them. And knowing who we're talking to, right? That's a big one. How is our what we're saying, what we're doing, what's our body language telling somebody else? So those communications where you have to have very courageous conversations with other people. Hey, when you did this yesterday, it did hurt my feelings. I didn't appreciate it. It made me feel stupid. Do you think in the future that you could have that conversation with me on the side in private? Those are conversations that are like really hard to have, and especially with doctors and associates. So understanding how you bring yourself to the situation, and then who else is in that situation with you? Who's in that conversation with you?
So feedback is the big one.
Oh yes.
Andrea, it's been so lovely to have you on the show today. I have 100 other questions that I want to dig into, but we don't have time for that. Like every other week, we burn through all the time we have. So I
Yes.
get a couple of
I felt
questions
like
for
I
you
talked the whole
before.
time. I'm so sorry.
No, it was awesome. Well, that's why you're here. We want you here to kind of share your wisdom with our audience. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Couple questions to wrap it up. A book, a YouTube video, a TED Talk, something that you found inspiring or that you think our listeners should check out.
Yeah, so I you asked me to give one, but I'd love
Only
to
one.
give two. Oh no,
Go
I have to
ahead. Let's
pick.
break the rules. We can break the rules. Go
I'll
ahead.
make it fast then. Five Dysfunctions of a Team by
Yes.
Patrick Lencioni is amazing. I use that in my lectures. I freaking love that book when I do coaching with leadership teams. Like that is it for me. And then we talked about feedback, Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Amazing way
Both
to give
amazing.
back.
Yeah,
So those two are like top, and that's a podcast too, like the top for me. I really enjoy both of those.
that's wonderful. And the second question that we asked, do you know anybody in the industry that would be a good guest on this podcast?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Rhonda Bell with Dog Days Consultings. She is amazing. Her and her business partner, Linda Miller, they are both amazing people. They do great things for our profession. Rhonda is one of my besties. And every time I get on the phone with her, email with her, anything, I'm always hanging on the seat of my chair, like, tell me more, tell me more. She's got great stuff and I love it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.